Welcome to the Dibley Diaries for this week. We're going to be looking at Luke chapter 2 about the shepherds and Mary, and the fact that the shepherds and Mary had to wait a long time to find out what God's plan was for them. And as I record this, I'm waiting for the winds to begin. Here in the countryside, we often think a lot more about the weather than maybe people in towns and cities, and it's going to get very windy this afternoon and not suitable for filming, so I'm kind of rushing my filming through so that I can have time outside before the bad weather really sets in. In the UK, there's a radio programme called Farming Today, and for years and years that had a really dedicated and detailed weather forecast that farmers would listen to. Now it's a bit more different with the internet, but Farming Today for years was the real stalwart of predicting what was going to happen with the weather. And it's important because if someone is wanting to harvest, they can't do that in the rain, but they can do it when it's dry. So you could ask people, are you coming to church that day? And they'd say, oh, I don't really know, because it depends what the weather is. Or other farming things happen, and travelling things are more difficult. If it's snowy or if bits are flooded, then that is more difficult. So it's important for farmers to know what is happening. And we're going to be thinking in the thought for the day a bit about how do we know what's going to happen, what are our expectations of what's going to happen, and how do we wait for things. But for now, I just wanted to say, well, it is important if you live in the countryside to have a good eye on what the weather is doing and what you think the weather is going to do, so that you can organise your life around it. Thought for the week this week is based on Luke chapter 2, 15 to 21. It's the story of the shepherds visiting Mary and Joseph and baby Jesus, how they go back up to the hills to look after their sheep, and that's followed by the line that Mary pondered all these things in her heart, and then it has the bit where they take Jesus at 8 days, and they name him Jesus as the angel said that they should. So this week is also the turn of the year. So from 2023 to 2024, New Year's Eve is the Sunday, and in one way a new year is just one day and then the next day, but also New Year's Eve is a time for us to reflect, to maybe think about changes that we need to make, and to wonder what's going to happen in 2024. What is the new year going to be like? The Queen notoriously had an annus horribilis in 1992, a terrible year, which she talked about in her Queen's speech, and now a lot of us associate that idea of having a horrible year being 2020, and people were like, goodbye 2020, welcome 2021, let's see if you can be better. And yet the world wasn't really a better place. The world wasn't a more certain place necessarily for anybody. It was really difficult. And then where we are now, we moved from 2023 to 2024 in a world full of conflict and difficulties, of hard times, and no more certainty than there ever has been. In fact, I checked on the Geneva Academy website, and they are monitoring 110 armed conflicts around the world, and that is a very difficult thing for us to think about as we come into a new year. Will it be a safer place, the world, or not? It raises our uncertainty, and it raises our understanding of waiting. What does waiting for something new look like? So as we come to this time, then it's important or useful for us to think about the shepherds and Mary. They waited ever such a long time to find out what God was doing with Jesus. We just have this short time to wait between Christmas and Easter. We do our journey very quickly. It's 3 or 4 months, depending on the phases of the moon and how Easter is calculated. But it was a long time for Mary and for the shepherds. It was 30 years before Jesus started his ministry, and it was 33 years before we get to Jesus' death and resurrection. They waited a long time to find out what God's plan was. We know that Mary was still alive, but she was very young when she had Jesus, and maybe there were some shepherds still alive when Jesus' ministry began, but we don't know. It was a long time in a place where there was a restricted life expectancy. But they waited, and they had to find out what God was up to, and they just had to wait and wait. They didn't know what God was up to. There was no certainty about it for them, but they had to wait in amongst this uncertainty that they had, knowing that God was up to something, and just living in the memory of the things that God had given them. One of the passages that goes with the Gospel reading for this Sunday is a passage from Galatians, and it reminds us that we are all God's children. That's what Jesus came to do. He came to make it so that we were all adopted into God's family. And whilst this seems quite an uncertain time for many people this turn of the year, and the world seems an unstable place, but we are confident that we are all God's children. So whilst we might have to wait for something for a long time, there might be something that you've waited 30 years for. And 2024 may be the year that changes and something happens there, or it may be the year that it doesn't happen again. But all the time while we wait, we remember that we are God's children, adopted into his family, in the way that when we listen to the great chapter from John 1, the prologue, it reminds us that that's the purpose, that we should all be God's children. That's the purpose of Jesus coming. So whilst we may be bringing uncertainty and concern to the turn of the year, we may be waiting for something for a long time, like Mary and the shepherds were waiting to see what God was doing. That whilst we wait, we remember that we are God's children, and we are loved by him, so we can wait in that hope and that certainty of that love. The Dibley moment for the week this week is about sheep, and something I didn't know about sheep for quite a long time, even when I lived in the countryside. But I remember looking at the Facebook community group for one of the villages in which I was working, and my friend who lived there had said, put this post saying, I have just found a sheep upside down in this particular field, looked quite distressed, so I've turned it the right way up again. Can the farmer whose field it is go and check it? I'm not sure exactly who that is. And I didn't realise until I read that post how dangerous it is for sheep to be upside down. It's really dangerous. They can get really waterlogged in their fleeces, or if they're pregnant, it's really bad for them. They get terrible breathing difficulties. So if you see an upside down sheep in a field in the UK, then you really do need to do something about it. Try and find the farmer whose sheep it is, or if you can and you're confident enough to, please do turn the sheep so that the sheep is standing on its legs again, because it's really dangerous. Well, that's it for the Dibley Diaries for this week and for this year. I pray that you and your village, however large or small, have a really blessed week, and that 2024 will be filled with blessings for you.